Well, we're back with Tom Monahan, Randy Hyde, and Robert Mann. And we're going to continue this segment on how to create a successful rug cleaning operation with some expert rug cleaning advice. So we have questions from the industry we're going to go through, and some of these might not follow a certain flow, but we're going to get some great tips from our experts here today. The first one is this: how much do you need to know to wash rugs? Can you just take a few classes?
You need to know a lot.
Tom, you started talking. Go ahead. Tell us about it.
Good. What I didn't appreciate were the unanticipated circumstances I ran into. For example, rug ID in construction and how to wash a rug. Person needs to know that. And can you just take a few classes and learn it? No. Can you take a few classes, even if it's hands-on, to learn how to wash rugs? It's not enough. So it becomes a journey that takes many months, years, and more years, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree with Tom. The problem with starting out not knowing much is that you have a very high attrition rate. You can just go and wash rugs. The question is, how many of them are you going to buy or have to farm out to someone else to get them fixed? In any business, it's a matter of controlling error and controlling loss. And the more education you get and the more practice you get, the better you're going to be. If it were easy to do, I'd suggest that everyone go and get a job with a place that's good and work there for a while, like Randy did, before they go and do it themselves. It's just not always possible.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I was lucky enough to work in the industry with people before I started my business. So by the time I opened my doors, I had kind of had a little idea of what to do in terms of rug cleaning. But to shift just a little bit, I run across people always talk about they had an accident with a rug, and I have a different view on problems in a wash plant. Just to go a little off topic, they're not accidents. They're a lapse in judgment, they're a lapse in experience, they're a lapse in knowledge, they're a lapse in employees caring about what they're doing, but they're not accidents. All of these things can be sharpened and honed to different degrees. If you say it's an accident, then it's almost like saying it's an act of God and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's far from the truth. Education is part of what's going to get you there. And as Bob and Tom have alluded to, that doesn't happen overnight. This is a career, and you have to kind of throw yourself into it and swim through the waters, so to speak, usually dirty rug water, to be a good cleaner, to be an experienced cleaner, to make sure you're not making these sometimes very simple mistakes and sometimes very complicated mistakes. They can cost you dearly.
Yeah.
Education isn't that common, actually. There's a lot of people doing classes, but I mean, imagine in another industry. Imagine you were going to hire a diesel mechanic and you just picked some guy off the street and he came in and started working for you. You sort of slowly taught him. Other industries don't do what the rug washing industry does. Other industries have training schools.
Yeah. Very good. Very good. Here's another one. Will I have to do the work or can I have my guys do it?
Depends how you set up your business, what your intention is.
A lot of folks like yourself. I don't know. Did you guys start by yourselves or did you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I did. I started by myself. And that's been a tough transition because I've went from being the guy that checks the rugs in, washes them, and does everything to having employees. And I've had to switch hats. And that's been tough for me to do because the reality is I actually like washing rugs. I'm weird like that.
Well,
I like being active in the business, but as it's grown, I can't do all the little things anymore. I have to be a manager of employees. I have to be the rally squad. I'm the guy that has to sit there at the desk and figure out what am I going to do in the age of COVID? How am I going to pay my employees? Everything but what I initially started out doing. That's my sob story.
Hey, Robert, my phone's going to ring in a minute. Don't worry.
Yeah, sorry. I think one of the big advantages, though, of having started yourself on the wash floor is that if you end up sitting at that desk, you still know everything that's happening in that room. You can walk into that wash room, troubleshoot what's going on, help train. I mean, I have seen wash operations where some guy on the wash floor knew a whole lot more about the process than the guy who owned the company. And that always seemed dysfunctional to me.
Yeah,
I agree.
Let's move to this one. Does it make sense to subcontract the hard stuff and focus on what we know we can handle? And if you do subcontract, can you find someone qualified in your market to do it?
I think the answer is yes to that, especially when for some reason, if you felt compelled to start in a rug washing business, you cannot learn all that skill set that we've been describing in a short period of time. So why not strategically align yourself with a rug plant that's already carrying the overhead, hopefully has a team of reasonable, good washers that can handle what you can't, and then you kind of blend into it if you so desire. But a lot of it depends on your level of commitment to the task, and maybe you shouldn't even be in it at all.
Yeah, the other thing it depends on is actually finding somebody you can subcontract with. I mean, obviously, not every market's got that available source. You know how women talk about how men don't ever want to ask directions? Well, I think that's what happens a lot of the time in the subcontract industry. You know, I see guys and they come into my place with something that's really kind of been treated wrong, and they're very proud that they did it themselves. I think, yep, you did it yourself, right? And so we resist this idea of ceding to the next guy, but if a good economic arrangement can be made, I mean, if you can make money doing it that way and you can learn slowly that way, it's much safer than messing up your own rugs.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. It's interesting. I had kind of an inverse thing happen. The old Moore wash plant that I started with is sending me a lot of specialty stuff, Navajos and color run correction stuff. It's not that they can't do this themselves. They're not really set up to do it. The volume that they do is kind of puts a cog in their wheel. So, for them to do that kind of work. So they just sub it out to me to be done versus trying to do it in-house.
Yeah. So would you, running your rug plants, would you offer that to other companies? Would you do their? Okay. That speaks.
We do as well. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Here's one we can probably blend two into one question about, can you start in your home and what's the minimum space requirement for a small plant? I guess a plant can't be in a home, right?
In a home or in a garage?
Well, I hope there's a garage. At least if you live in the north.
Well, that all depends. I mean, I've done it myself. Many have, but I had the luxury of a 30 by 40 foot pole barn with a 400 square foot office attached to it. Mm. So my wash pit was small, 16 by 14. My drying area where I had 10 poles was 14 and a half by 10. I had a rug check-in area that was 21 by 12, which I also parked a truck in there in wintertime and pulled it out so I could have my rug operate. And the rest of the square footage,
schedule pickup.
the rest of the square footage had automated equipment, and I was all crammed in there and could successfully run the operation by essentially one person. So yeah, it could be done, but it's not recommended in my opinion.
Yeah.
I'll tell you a story. I washed rugs in a driveway for 4 years before I rented a space. And of course I live in a place where it's warm and sunny a lot of the year, and it worked. Now, of course, I was mostly restoring rugs. I was reweaving holes and sewing, so I had a source of revenue there. I wasn't living off that rug washing. But it took me a very long time to graduate to even being inside of a building with a wash floor.
Well, it can be done. There's an issue of standard of care for clients' products. And you see some of these photos, I'm blown away. And I've seen photos where guys are laying rugs out to wash them, and behind that is their big block Chevy on an engine stand that they're rebuilding. You're thinking, well, what's this guy doing? When you're in a situation like that, you're also increasing the possibility of damage and other issues with the client's property. The second thing that comes to mind is if you have a setup like that, a lot of these guys are having to set their wash pit up and then break it down. There's a loss of revenue in time and energy that you're going to spend trying to move things around in your garage to be able to wash a few rugs. Should you do it? I'm not saying that you shouldn't. I'm just saying there's an inherent problem with that kind of a setup that is going to rear its ugly head sooner or later. But sure, I guess guys can do that. Wash a couple of rugs here or there in their garage,
and probably then quickly move into a building as
yeah,
they, grow their business. Here's one. do you need a visible location to bring in business? I guess that means like a storefront that people can see.
I'm in an industrial space, so it's visible, but not from any main road. It certainly helps. It doesn't hurt your business to have that profile. But if you're a good washer, I've found that people will find you.
Yeah. Robert, I think you're in a visible location, or?
Not very. I mean, in theory, but the street that we're on, nobody drives down this street. It dead ends at two major north-souths. I don't think that a visible location is as critical. And I think one of the real issues there is that visible locations cost a lot more money than obscure ones usually. And they are often not industrial spaces. A lot of people, I made this mistake myself, a lot of people start out in low ceilings, small buildings that are not things you can grow into. And so by discarding the idea of the visible location and going for a more pure industrial type space, like a bay type building, you're really getting yourself closer to where you're going to end up anyway.
Okay. Tom, what do you think? Any words?
Yeah, I had what is considered in my town a cottage business. That is, you can operate out of your house if you have a certain percentage of business that is retail, that is, and then the staff that works for you, you can have a certain amount of them that are not blood relatives. And that's how we operated. We're a really small business for a while. And then I moved that, and there was no problem. People got a kick out of driving down my driveway, dropping off rugs. And that's how it is kind of in this college town. Then we moved our
991 Melissa Elliott.
I'm sorry.
That's all right. Then we moved our business on a busy street in the city of Wayne. 40,000 cars went down the street. And measurably, it didn't justify the cost of the move from just that standpoint.
Good points. All right. Let's do one more question, and then we're going to ask for you to, I have two questions, I guess, one easy one and one tough one. So here's maybe an easy one. What's it cost to set up a rug plant? Maybe that's not so easy.
No. Well, there's a lot of variables, like as we've already talked about. I'm trying to think, I'll think back to the numbers as I'm talking here for my specific situation, but it depends on how big you're going to make your wash plant. It depends on the market you're in for space. The space I'm in right now, we just expanded to 7,000 square feet, but it was 5,000 square feet. The wash pit's 20 by 30. At the time, I think pouring and fabricating that wash pit costs about $3,000. Wasn't that expensive actually to do concrete work. Plumbing was another couple $1,000s. I want to say I was in it less than $20,000, but I did a lot of the labor myself. I welded the dry rack myself, so there's a lot of sweat equity there. That's a bigger size wash plant. You can do things a lot cheaper, and if you do them off season, if you do your concrete work in the wintertime here, people are pining for jobs, so you can get a really good deal. So there's things like that. I would say you could do it for easily under $20,000, something small, not grandiose, not large ticket equipment purchases.
Yeah, I think Randy's right. 10, 20,000 for something very, very limited. The problem is the minute you start scaling upwards, the numbers just go up geometrically. I mean, 100,000, 200,000, 300,000, it's very easy to spend. If you think about water supply, power, the right size of building, right ceiling height, and at that point, you're still only talking about a plant that might do 3,000, 4,000 square feet a week. We're not talking a gigantic plant, but a plant that has the capacity to expand your business or expand your volume. All that basic stuff is really expensive. The minute you need machines, you need big power first.
You mean 110 doesn't do it?
Not for most of it, no. No. We have 1,600 amps in our building. Let me put it to you that way.
All right.
Big water lines are too expensive, so you need water storage tanks. Tap fees are too high. I mean, it just goes on and on. I'd be happy to sit with anybody who sees this broadcast, and they can call me up and I'll tell them our story.
That's a great invitation. Appreciate that. Tom, anything to add, or should we move on?
Well, I agree with everybody. And again, you're determining what you're going to do intentionally to be either small or you start ratcheting up. You can come in at any level. You can come in under $5,000. But again, what are you going to do as the business starts rolling in and you got more serious about it, it just goes skyward from there.
Okay, so here's the last question. And any of you can comment if you'd like. If you had to do it all over again, what would you do?
Get a real job. So,
You know, a lot of self-employed people will say that. In fact, I love the joke that an entrepreneur will work 80 hours a week to avoid 40.
I probably, personally for me, I would probably have invested in some of the equipment I have sooner. Would be the big thing that I've done. The original building I put my shop in was, again, one of those bay buildings that was expandable, although the neighbor next door wasn't really willing to move. The second location we moved into has worked out pretty good for us. It's a big enough building that allows us, when one tenant moves out, for us to take that space, which is in fact what we've done. So it's allowed us to scale up a bit more. We also have 1,000 amps worth of power that's not used in this segment of building that I'm in. So I have the ability to add equipment in the future, which is kind of nice. So
Good.
it,
Yeah,
yeah, go ahead.
sorry. I agree with Randy. I would have taken bigger risks sooner, spent more money sooner, bought more real estate, whatever, you know. I know that sounds like a flippant thing to say, but if you're going to run a business for 30, 40, or however many years you're going to work in that business, you want to get it set up as quick as you can, and you want to start paying yourself and owning real estate as quick as you can, because rug washing doesn't necessarily provide such a fantastic source of revenue, whereas over the long run, investing in equipment, real estate, and people will pay you back.
Okay. Tom, you being quiet?
I agree. We had a rug summit many years ago, well, not too many years ago, and we sat around the table and discussed what we were really doing. And it was Robert Mann right there who said, you think we're rug washers, we're really in the real estate market. And so that stuck in my mind because the truth of it is, you know, sometimes rug washing is event driven, and possibly you can be smarter in the long range by determining your location for the plant, and that becomes your retirement later, as opposed to the business being sold.
Good stuff, guys. Anything else you'd like to add before we sign off?
No.
Tom, do you want to tell your horror story
Yeah,
another time?
another time, another segment.
All right, we'll do that. Well, gentlemen, thanks for your time. Talk to you later.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.